And we are live. Welcome, everybody. It's a book and a beverage, and we have everyone's favorite Christopher Warman, probably because most of us don't know another Christopher Warman. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So, you and your wife have written two books so far, correct?
Correct, yes.
And the first one was a SPIFBO 7 semifinalist, the runner
Yes.
up to the finalist in your group, no
Yes.
less.
Yeah, which was Burn Red Skies, which, by the way, is fantastic. Really, really good book.
Cool. Um, and you are working on your third book now in the series. It'll be out by the end of this month, right?
Oh,
No.
honestly, I wish. Yeah, that would be amazing if we could just get it done with. No, yeah, our third book in the series is going to be called "A Rescue in Zen," and it is releasing hopefully at the earliest in January, maybe February. So it will have been 2 years since book two.
And do you have a cover for that? And have you revealed
Not
it?
yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet.
No, it is. We're currently shopping around with some artists to figure out what the cover will be. And also, the book has so many cool scenes going on where, like, for the first two books, we kind of had a very clear idea of what the cover was going to be,
Yep.
which scene from the book. But for this one, we just have too many ideas. There's just so many cool things that happen.
So you're of the school that you should put a scene from your book on your cover.
Or at least, yeah, a scene that kind of represents what the book is about. Yeah, I am. I always, I don't know, growing up, I always thought that like that's what the book cover was supposed to be. So
Yeah.
I used to get kind of frustrated when I would finish a book and then I'd look at the cover and say like, was this even in the book at all? Like I remember like reading the Wheel of Time series. A lot of those covers just don't really happen in the book. They're just kind of I don't know, characters hanging out, and I don't know. That always kind of frustrated me.
Yeah. I have heard, and I think oh geez, senior moment here. I can't even think of his name again. The indie author. He lives in New Zealand now. Huge, blew up, sold a gazillion books.
Um, is it like Ryan Cahill or?
Yes, Ryan
Oh,
Cahill.
okay.
Yeah, he's the one who's adamant you should not put a scene on the cover of your book. It should be, sort of more just random item, not random
Yeah,
item, but yeah. And
representative.
I hate those covers. I'm like, I have no idea what this is. Don't tell me it's thematically.
They're
I'm
fine, but
very
like I get frustrated going into a bookstore and all I see is like sword cover, axe cover, and it's always like a weapon. And
yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna be an item, it better be something that's like really representative of something from the book. I don't know, maybe like a character has a very specific like item or a weapon, but if it's just a sword, I don't know, it's not
Yeah.
for me.
Let's see. So book three is coming out next year.
Uh-oh. Ruffling some feathers already. What is it, like 4 minutes into the conversation and we're
Yeah, that's about normal for us. Um, yeah, but Tim, if you haven't seen, he has some really cool artwork inside the book. Now
oh, that I do love.
it's way too long, so I'll never read it. Um, actually, he's convinced me since it's actually three books in one that I can read it. My rule is I won't read anything over 500 pages, and his is 705, and he just doesn't have 205 illustrations. So, but he did say it's books one, two, and three combined, so I might be able to actually read that.
Well, that's not too bad. Yeah, we're thinking of doing something similar. We already commissioned an artist to draw several of the characters of our books, and
Mm-hmm.
once book three releases, we're gonna give it a few months, and we're gonna release like an omnibus with the first three books. So it might go past the 500 page mark. Actually, definitely will. But so far, each book is pretty short. The first one is around like 220 pages. It's just a little bit over a novella.
Yeah.
And then the second one is I think about double the size, so it's around like 430 pages. So uh, just under 500.
So, who are the main characters in your books?
So that's kind of interesting because we wanted to do something a little bit different with our series. The first book, especially, it's almost like a little standalone. Like you could read the first book and not read the rest of the series if you wanted. It's just kind of it's a standalone. And really, what the inspiration was for this book was that a lot of fantasy series are, I don't know, there's always like a world-ending, earth-shattering sort of MacGuffin or a chosen one, something like that. So what we wanted to do was the opposite of that. So we start in like a small village, and the first book is divided in 4 parts, and each part is almost like its own like contained short story that takes place in one season of a year. So it starts with autumn, and it goes from there. And each short story has its own character and point of view. So we really wanted to start with yeah, just a small contained village. It all takes place in this small town near the woods, and it's told in a very like fairy tale kind of way. And as I said, it's very contained. Whereas the second book takes place a year later in a completely different part of the world, with a completely different set of characters, and it's kind of a quest-based, Mediterranean-inspired, yeah, just like a quest fantasy. And then with our third book, we're going to bridge the gap and kind of bring the both books together and expand the world even more. So we're starting really small and then slowly making it more and more epic. But as far as who the characters are, in the first one we have Adriel. She's an apprentice enchantress. We have Handel. He's this alcoholic, desperate father whose daughter is sick, and he's trying to find some kind of cure or magical way to heal her. We have Braid, who's a foreman who has recently started digging into the earth and has found this kind of magical element. And then we have Ash, who she and her daughter have suffered very intense burns, and they're trying to find she's trying to find a way to essentially cure her daughter of her ailment. And each story is about sacrifice and the choices people need to make, hard choices. And I don't want to really spoil too much, but it's pretty intense. It's pretty dark.
So it is actually dark. It's not grim dark, I'm assuming.
It's not grimdark, but it's definitely like a dark fantasy, inspired a lot by like folk tales and yeah, folklore.
Okay. Because when you first started, when you had the small, I was like, is this cozy?
It is deceptively cozy. Someone read the first chapter and told me, "Oh, I didn't realize this was going to be cozy," because it talks about like houses in the woods and everyone's hunkering down for the fall, and it's kind of chilly. And then it kind of turns from there, and it gets pretty dark pretty fast. We actually we started. We also wanted to do something else that was a little bit different, and a lot of books and stories, they'll save their twist for the end. Instead, we kind of have our twist happen within the first like 5-6 chapters. And so you'll see a lot of reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, and they'll say, like, what was that? Like, I was reading it and I thought this was fine, and then the 5th chapter happened, and it all just kind of turned on its head. So yeah, it's a fun one.
Yep. Deceptively cozy, yes. Let's see. And I was going to ask you a question, and it just went right out of my head. And it was one of the things we talked about before we came live. I have no idea what it is now.
That's why you should never prep. No.
don't get old. It's horrible. Anyway, so in that case, we're going to go to a serious question for you. Are there any real world myths or legends that inspired your story or your world?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot that we pull from things that have, as I said, it starts really small and contained. So there's things that we pull from everyday life. I was born and raised in Italy, and my family is from a very rural town. Like, we're talking like my grandfather was born and raised in a cave. It was like a cave house that was like, inside of the earth itself. And I've gone and visited it, and it's wild. They had like chickens and a donkey in there. So I pull a lot from like that, from that sort of like rural European kind of life. But as far as like myths and legends, there's like the first book actually starts with kind of like our creation myth that we start from scratch. And what we wanted to do there is take a lot of familiar familiar creatures like dragons and mermaids, vampires, jinn, and just always do something a little bit different with it. Like whenever you finally encounter, I actually don't want to spoil, but anytime you encounter one of these magical creatures, you have an expectation of what they're going to be like, and then we just kind of like do our own thing with it and undercut it a little bit.
Nice. I remembered my question now.
Okay.
So these two books and the third one when it comes out, it's you and your wife write them together, correct?
We do, yes.
And you have many other ideas for books that you all want to do. I asked you before we went live, are you ever going to write something solo, or is it always you're a team forever?
Honestly, that's something that we've asked each other many times. We've been together for 14 years. At this point, I kind of, just our household is a collaboration. Everything we do is collaborative. We cook together. We're those kinds of people. We just really enjoy each other's presence, and we've collaborated on film before. We both went to the same film school. We write together. We've done music together. So it's really hard to see creating something without each other's input or each other's at least handprints into it. I mean, Seasons of Abaddon, the first book, I actually wrote by myself the first pass, and she was the first person that I showed it to. She read it and she said, "It's good, but it could be better." And so I was like, "How would you make it better?" And within a week, we had a whole other draft, like pages that were just like X'd out, and that's sort of how the collaboration on writing began. Is she just took something that was fine and made it a whole lot better.
That kind of answers Alex's question here, but
how do we solve creative conflicts? So I guess that kind of brings me to like our writing style. How exactly do we collaborate whenever it comes to writing? So it kind of started, as I mentioned, with the first book, where I do trust her when it comes to creative writing. She's an English major. She's written a lot of like really good papers and a lot of really good poetry and narratives. So I do trust her from that aspect. But I'm not going to say that like we don't debate. Like one of the things that we do is on Friday, once we clock out, we will go to the nearest bar, and then we will actually just talk about like our story over drinks. And a lot of times we've gone into like debates. I'm sure that the people near us at the bar, they're just like, this couple is fighting, and no, we're not. I mean, we are, but we're not. And I think that there's a lot of like really good stuff that comes from like that kind of conflict. It creates something that's really, really good. But the way that we write is, I will usually outline the book, and then we get together, and then we kind of discuss each point, each chapter that we, each kind of thematical point, each character arc that we want to hit. And then after that, I will do a full vomit draft by myself. I will literally sit down at the computer, write and write and write and write until we kind of have a book that follows that original outline. And that's because that's what my strength is. My strength is in just getting it out on the page. And then I'll print it. It's usually about 500-600 pages by then, and then I give it to her, and she starts crossing pages and throwing them in the trash. And then once she does her pass that way, then we get together and we actually read it together, this kind of second edit pass, and we read it out loud to each other, and then we just kind of let it sit and make sure that it's exactly what we want it to be. So that's sort of how our collaboration is. There's a lot of give and take. I have to concede a lot of ground, but ultimately it's for the best.
Yes, Jim says, I mean, it's so nice that you can give like honest feedback and not couched in, it was really good, but and you can be like, no.
I literally went through a chapter today where the first 10 pages were crossed out. and at the very end of the 10th page, there was one note that said just no. And so sometimes you have to, I mean, you can't take it personal. And,
right.
Afterwards we've had our little conversation, and she kind of walked me through why that didn't make sense. And ultimately she was absolutely right. I established certain things for a character that then I undermined with my own writing. And she said, why would you undermine all this groundwork that we laid up? And so, you can't take it personally. At the end of the day, it all has to serve the story and our readers. Yeah, she's pretty savage sometimes.
So I always tell people my favorite part is the editing part because I don't care how much you say is this is trash. I'm like, fine, I'll replace it with something better. I'm only making my book better at every single pass. Why would I get upset at that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
So yeah,
one of my favorite quotes was it was actually Robin Hobb, and it was in her conversation she had with George R. R. Martin, where she talked about how, her favorite part is the editing phase because like whenever you're writing, you're catching butterflies, and whenever you're editing, you're grabbing the butterflies, picking out the most beautiful ones, and pinning them on the page. So it's really just about taking the things that it's about being productive first and then being pretty later. And I do like editing quite a bit. It makes sense of the mess.
now I do have to tell you that I was thinking very unkind thoughts about you previously when I saw an interview when you said that you can rock out a vomit draft in no time flat. And that is absolutely the hardest thing for me. That takes at least 50% of all the time is for me to write that first draft. After that, I don't care how much I fix, edit, but just getting it on the page is, oh my God.
I will
I
say
pull my hair out.
I feel like I feel like that interview came out way long ago because yes, first two books, Vomit Draft was actually really easy. I think the Vomit Draft for the first book in about like 4 to 5 weeks.
Oof.
But then this third book, I started the third book the day we published book two, so it has been almost 2 years of me working on this draft and uh, talking it through with my wife, and even this chapter that we worked on today, I as soon as I was done with it, I was like, wait a minute. Why are we establishing this thing now, 30 chapters in? We should go back and do. So it's a constant like revision, and
Yep.
it's going to be a while, but we think we can hit that deadline that we set for ourselves. Nobody's setting this for us. We're self-published,
Right.
yeah, we're hoping we can hit that. But I like the Vomit Draft. It's just a lot of chaos, and I kind of thrive in that environment. Yeah, I can sit down and like get 2-3 thousand words out in a couple hours, almost every day. So um, yeah, it's not too
No.
hard.
See, I try to tell myself 1,000 words a day. That's all I want is 1,000 words a day. And if I do that and I'm consistent, then it'll be over soon enough.
I will say though, it's not every day though, because like there are
Right.
days where I'm like 2-3 thousand words, and then there are other days where I will look at the last sentence that I wrote, and I'm like, nah, not today. I just close the document. You have those spurts of just like productiveness. At least
Yep.
I do. But then there are those days where I'm just like 50 words. That was good enough. Can't get past this. You hit a
Yep.
wall.
Okay. Well, enough for serious questions. I didn't have ChatGPT make these questions for nothing. Okay, so here's the scenario. You're going to have to pick a character. I'll tell you the scenario, and you can pick the character. Your character is in the presence of the emperor, and he or she tells the emperor some bad news. The emperor gets so upset he jumps up out of his office throne. He starts screaming, red faced, and he has a heart attack and dies. What happens to your character then?
What happens to my character then? Did you mention? Is it just me and the emperor? Is there anyone else in this
Well,
courthouse?
it's the whole throne room. So you got all the nobles and whatnot there.
Oh, that is a good question. Um,
So who would be the character most likely to have to report to an emperor first?
well, it would probably be some sort of counselor or knight. I'm gonna say I'm actually um, the emperor's son,
Okay.
and yeah, I was reporting just kind of day-to-day stuff, and the moment the emperor dies, I have to stop myself from smiling because I've been waiting so long for this to happen. I am in my 50s, and I was supposed to be made emperor long ago, but the emperor has outlasted and outlived anyone's expectations. He is like 90 to 100 years old. And so first thing I have to do is stop myself from smirking and kind of just reassess where I am. I'm in the presence of my future court. So what I do is I approach the throne and confirm that the king is in fact dead. Yeah, smite that sense of glee and happiness, turn to the court and announce, my father has died.
The king is dead. Long live the king.
Pretty much.
Okay. So have you done any work on your horror movie or your Western that you want to write? Can you tell us anything about those? I
Yeah,
mean,
sure. My wife and I, we don't want to stop at just fantasy. Our series is going to be 5 books, so that's going to take a lot of the bulk of our concentration for the next few years. As we talked about before, Mike, it's really tough, at least for us. I think some authors do this where they just kind of like pick a book and write it that day, and then they move on to the next thing, and almost like people that are what do they call it, like mood readers,
yeah.
where they can just pick up a book and just read it. I'm not that way. My wife is not that way. If I pick up a book to read, I gotta finish that book and then move on to the next thing. Same thing with writing. If I'm writing a book or a series, I gotta finish that series. I gotta finish reading that book. So it's gonna be a while before we pivot into something else.
Yeah.
But we would love to move away from fantasy for a little bit. We want to write. We have some ideas for a horror novel, one that we've actually already outlined. We kind of have a lot of ideas on how to do. We're just not quite ready to start it yet.
So I have an idea to pitch.
Sure.
It's a horror novel, but it's going to be a horror specifically for you.
Oh, for me? Okay.
Yeah. So we had a guy on the show here, Sebastian Carlisle. He has not published anything yet, but he had 3 books that he was working on simultaneously. And he had just split from his significant other, so he's in an apartment, had walls with nothing on it. So he literally, each wall he had Post-it notes where he was doing his timeline for his 3 books on 3 separate walls in the same room. And I want to say, what happens if this is Chris Warman and this happens and then a freak storm blows in and blows most of those notes onto the floor and you have to then try to separate them? Do you just break down and cry then, or what?
Okay, so first of all, already having to work on 3 books and having my walls covered in Post-it notes, that is already my nightmare. And that is already the horror part of the story. So maybe the wind coming in is the best case scenario.
So, if I remember correctly, one was a military sci-fi, one was an Arthurian legend, and one was an epic fantasy. So
they're not even like related stories.
Yeah.
Like these are 3 separate individual books that are,
and they're all going to be series.
Yeah, we're yeah, if the wind comes and blows everything away, I'm just forgetting it all, and I'm gonna have a big sense of relief that it's all gone. But no, that's honestly, I could not operate that way. More power to this author, this prospective author, if that's how they want to do things. But that would actually probably give me a heart attack, and also having to see that every day would give me so much anxiety.
I asked him, I'm like, have you ever put like a Post-it note on the wrong wall? He goes, oh yeah, but I mean, it sticks out because they're so very. I'm like, okay, they don't have laser guns in Arthurians. It's like, so then I just moved to the other wall. I'm like, how do you get anything done? You're going from, I'm like, how many different parts of your brain is this stored in?
Not even using different colored Post-it notes for each story. Oh my goodness. I would have started there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have one more horror scenario for you.
Let's go.
Catherine D. Graham has been on our show, and she told, and this is, I do not wish this upon anyone. I don't care how much I despise an author's writing. I would never wish this upon someone. But she wrote 5 books in her series. She got them all finished, and she's going, we're going to do rapid release every other month. 5 books. Know what I'm doing this year. All is good in the world. So she released book 1. She released book 2. She went to upload book 3, and it said this file is corrupted. So she went back to her to her other file, separate file, and that was corrupted. So she went to her Google Drive, and that was corrupted. And she lost book 3 after she published the first 2 and said, yes, every 2 months. And she was like 2 weeks away from when it was time to publish, and she did not have book 3 anymore.
Okay, yeah, that's a horror scenario. That is actually horrific, and I really feel for this author. Oh my goodness. And I mean, it even seems, because my first thing is this was something that was ingrained to me in film school, especially with footage,
Yeah.
is you take your footage and you back up your footage, and then you create a backup of your backup, and
Yeah.
then you give that backup to somebody else to back up. So you're just creating a chain of backups, because if your footage is gone, you got to reshoot.
Yeah.
So my first instinct was, oh, like this person didn't like back up, but it sounds like this person did back up.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
oh
Like
my
I said,
goodness, like
she
what
had
do
a
you,
backup, and then she had one on her Google Drive to be separate from her computer just to be safe, and
that's,
they all corrupted.
yeah. So I would wait until the tears stopped falling. And yeah, I mean, what's no, I wouldn't even wish that on anyone. No, I would not wish a whole book. That's, I mean, it could be the worst trash anyone has ever written, and I still uh, wouldn't wish that on anyone. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's nice is at least they do have two other books that are written. I would immediately check all the files for those books to
Oh
make
yeah,
sure
she
that
did.
they're
She did. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that would be the first thing I did. Check check those other files to make sure they're not also corrupted, and then I guess start working on book three. I mean, that's what sucks, is because like having two other books that take place after the third book written, like how do you know that you're not overlapping things, that you're not treading water that has already been treaded? Like you'll have to essentially, you can't rewrite a whole book that's gone without rewriting the following two. So yeah,
Yeah.
that sucks.
I mean, I all the time when I edit, I'm like, I said this a page ago, and he hit brought up the same point. I must have stopped for the day, and then when I came back, and then I'm
I
like almost word for word,
I
and
do
I'm
that
like,
all the time. Yeah,
yeah,
Elan, she always tells me whenever she's editing, she's like, "Man, you really like your characters to repeat the same thing over and over again." I'm like, "I'm sorry." Sometimes I have to like remind myself where I left off to keep going. But if I had to rewrite a book that I had already written, first of all, that's terrible. But then yeah, it would absolutely affect the following two, because like you would have to essentially do minor rewrites on those two as well to make sure that everything flows together again.
yeah.
It's terrible.
So we have a game we play here now. So I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 28 and 60.
Oh, that's a fun spread of numbers. Let's do, you said 28 and 60. Let's do 57. Let's go a little up.
So EL is in here, and he normally gets banned halfway through, but he didn't come in until the 27th minute. So we're guessing what minute he will be banned from the show.
Oh, okay. All right.
Normally he gets about halfway before he gets banned. So I mean that's probably a solid guess there. The 57 you said?
Yeah, 57. So that's about like towards like later in
Yeah.
the conversation. What are
That,
some
that,
of
is,
the
that is a
reasons?
solid guess,
What
especially
are
since
some of the reasons?
don't know. He allegedly was blaming us for a while, but we're not that technologically savvy to know how to do it. So, but yeah, he tends to ask questions when we flounder like now. So feel free, yeah.
Se me empina
Uh,
absolutamente.
so let's see. There was a request to send one of your characters to the Bald Dome.
To the ball. Oh, well, I mean, this is an easy one. Super easy character to choose. I'm assuming that the baldom has something to do with baldness.
No. So
Oh,
what
it
we do
doesn't.
is this: we want to know about your characters, but we don't want to have spoilers.
Oh, I see.
So what we do is you pick one of your characters. They get magically transported to one of these places here. I'm going to roll a die to see which one it is. And then they get a fizzy potion that is whatever your favorite color is. It's that color fizzy potion. They do not know what the potion does. But if they drink it or if they throw it at their adversary, it's 100% it will work, whatever it is.
Okay.
Then you get a choice. You can get a common item or you can get a weapon. If you choose a common item, then you're going to face a regular animal. If you get a weapon, you will face a fantasy creature. And we used to make it like gladiatorial style, but some people's characters just aren't fighters. So instead, it's you paint the picture, tell us what happens when this encounter goes. I mean, one person ended up riding the bear out of the city. So it's up to you. You tell us the story. And I'm going to roll now. And we got a 2. What is 2? Let's be one. Okay, you are in a bustling marketplace in a sprawling desert city.
Oh, lovely.
Which character is this, by the way?
So I'm going to pick, excuse me, I'm going to pick Valen. Valen is our cover character for our second book. She is a ancient personified djinn, a genie of the lamp who has a great connection with our magic system is based on what we call life energy, which is something that is kind of emitted by any living creature.
Okay. So the Jinn, what was the name again?
Valen.
Valen. Okay. So Valen is in a sprawling city in the desert. He has a, what is your favorite color?
Favorite color? Mine, orange.
He has an orange fizzy potion.
All right.
In an Erlenmeyer flask, because I'm a chemist, so we're going to use an Erlenmeyer flask.
Oh, perfect.
Now, does he want a regular item or does he want a weapon?
So first of all, Valen is
she.
Character. No problem. Let's do an item.
A regular item?
Yeah, it just seems more fun.
Okay, so 16. She has a quilt.
Oh, you said a quilt?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She could have had a war pick, but she went with a quilt. But now she is facing a water buffalo rather than a massive dragon. So, trade-offs.
Give or take, yeah.
So your female djinn with an orange fizzy potion and a quilt is facing a water buffalo in a sprawling desert city. What happens?
And so in this scenario, there are no rules or anything. Like my character, no matter what she does, she will never know what the fizzy potion is until she uses it. Correct. All right.
Yeah.
So
and the rules of your world are in effect here. So if everyone's a magic user, yay for you.
All right. So,
whatever the rules of your world are.
Nobody is a magic user. They do have these things that are called rune stones that they can use for enchanting pieces of like armor or weaponry, but nobody can actually, conjure magic. However, Valen, being she is a djinn, therefore a being of pure life energy, she can do a few things, modifying physics in certain small way. The whole point of the desert is no water. Yeah, poor water buffalo. That is an unfortunate place for it to be. So one of the first things that Valen would do, having a great connection to life energy, is she would be able to link with the buffalo and sense what its state is. She would know if the buffalo was mad, happy, that sort of thing. If she should get out of the way.
It's very thirsty.
It's very thirsty. So I think so Valen is a very wise and caring person. So her whole ethos is while she is an adept, she's adept with a dagger, but her whole ethos is because she can feel life energy, is she always tries to choose the path of nonviolence whenever she can. Because, could you imagine being able to feel something die, something other than yourself, anytime you killed something? It just wouldn't be great. So I think she would look at this fizzy potion and say, I don't know what it does. I don't want, it could kill the buffalo. She wouldn't want that because, the buffalo could feel itself die. So or she could feel the buffalo die. So what she would do is she would turn to the market and she would try to maybe find someone that is selling water skins, something that I'm guessing since it's like a desert market, someone might sell water skins. So she searches for a merchant selling water skins, or at least something containing water, maybe cactus or prickly pears, something like that.
So they will readily trade you water, twice the volume of water as your fizzy potion.
All right, let's do it. She would absolutely do that, and then she would absolutely give the water to the water buffalo to ensure that it does not die of thirst.
So she gave away a potion of invulnerability for the paltry sum of twice the amount of water. But, it could have been worse. She could have given it to the water buffalo and then antagonized it. So,
Right, exactly. Well, it could have gone better. But yes, she
But
is a very sweet character. She's very caring. Yeah, a very fun one to write as well. She feels a lot, and not just from people and animals, but also like the nature around her. She's very attuned to how trees feel and the grass beneath her feet. Yeah, she's a fun one.
okay, so they go with no fatalities.
Perfect, awesome, and I'm sure they become best friends.
Okay, so then this is why we no longer make it have to be a battle. Um,
I mean,
let
if
me
it
get
was a battle, it'd be very interesting because, like, as part of the story, Valen does have a dagger with her. She's a dagger swords fighter, and her dagger is actually bound to her, so it only cuts whenever she's wielding it. But it cuts anything. It's a physics defying dagger that can cut through anything.
nice. So if you, so now I have to play, devil's advocate here. So what if someone cuts off her arm and then grabs up the arm, and then the hand still has the knife? Can they cut with the knife?
So they couldn't. Well, that's a good question, but I don't think they could just because, like, the dagger is sealed to her by way of her life energy. The dagger is, it's almost like it's alive. So she's connected to it by the life energy that she has. So I'm just wondering if her arm was cut off, would her arm still have life energy? I guess it wouldn't be an alive thing. So I guess neither the person trying to use the arm nor her would ever be able to wield it again.
How hard would that be to wield? You're holding the arm that's holding the deck. Yeah, that.
It'd be definitely horrifying to look at.
So, and EL has reminded me that I have sinned, and I have not asked you to hold your books up for the camera. So there we go. And
And
EL was not here in the beginning, so he wants to know if the book is supposed to feel like a warm hug.
It is not at all. I mean, I guess the beginning of Seasons of Albadoon is very cozy. As I said earlier, it's deceptively cozy. It kind of starts in these woods. It's in the fall. You feel the briskness of the air. You see the chimneys starting to light up in the woods and of all the woods folk that are living there. Someone's making soup. Like it's very cozy and cute. And that very quickly the rug gets pulled from under your feet and you will see what I mean when you read it. I'm hoping you read it.
So, questions about you. Why in the wide, wide world did you leave Italy to come to the U.S.?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I was born and raised in Italy. My dad is actually from Chicago, and my mother is Italian. I've always been speaking both languages, even though my English was not as good before I came here. But yeah, in 2007, like my dad, he lost his job in Italy, so we decided to come to. Um, um, it has no reviews on Goodreads. Ban this person. No,
Well, his very next post.
no, it has a lot. It should have about 200. But anyways, um, yeah, no, my dad lost his job in Italy, and then there was the fact that my grandparents were getting pretty old, his parents, who lived in Oklahoma at the time. And so we decided to move to the United States, to Oklahoma. So I went from Italy to Oklahoma, which is, I know, hilarious. Huge culture shock. Yeah, it was fun. I did my senior year of high school there, and that's actually where I met my wife. So we've been together ever since.
Where in Oklahoma?
We lived in Claremore, Oklahoma. It's a small, the home of Will Rogers, if anyone knows who that is.
You are going to have to help me with that. I do like geography, but I do not know that. What big city is it near? Anything?
Tulsa. It's
Tulsa,
very
okay.
very close to Tulsa, like 30 minutes away.
See, EL is not all bad. He was thinking the same thing as me.
Yeah, the home of Will Rogers, which is really hilarious. Where I currently live in, it is a small place, but I currently live in Los Angeles. I've been here for about 7 years since after college, and the first beach we ever went to was Will Rogers State Beach. We didn't realize that Will Rogers was like a really big guy here in Hollywood back in like, I mean, we did realize he was obviously an actor, but he was big enough that they named the state beach after him. So yeah, we went to Will Rogers State Beach and we were like, oh, feels not like home at all, but it's called Will Rogers.
Ooh. So let's see. We have to go for a silly question then because it's been a while.
Let's do it.
15. Let's see. What is the strangest or most unexpected thing you've ever had to research for a book?
Oh, that's easy. I feel like I'm on a list with the FBI or something. Just
Always,
because
yes.
I mean, that's just the author way. But recently we had to look up what is the speed that an arrow would take to slice through someone's skull to come out the other side.
Nice.
So that was
not like through the ears, like through the skull?
Like straight on ahead. Like, what is the
okay.
speed? Like, is it possible to do that? And what kind of force and speed it would take? So that took a lot more research than you would expect, just because it's a very difficult question to phrase on Google. Like, not a whole lot of people are writing about aerophysics. But yeah, it's actually not that hard to go through someone's skull, turns out.
Yeah, Timothy is definitely on the list.
Like, I stopped using incognito once I realized that, it doesn't actually, it only hides your Google searches from yourself or from your computer and account. But like, the FBI knows what you're looking at, even in incognito mode. So who cares? Like,
so question for you, when you're writing your books, do you get into arguments with your characters? And if so, who wins?
Oh, so not so much me, just because I'm very good at, the vomit draft, where I just keep things flowing. And even if the scene doesn't end up where it needs to go, I push on ahead and I kind of write a note. I'm like, I didn't like how that ended. Let's put a pin in it and go back later. Because I kind of find that if I keep editing myself as I'm writing, it kind of slows me down a little bit. And then I second guess myself. So I know where a scene needs to go, but how I get there is entirely a surprise to me most of the time. So I don't really argue with my characters that much, but my wife definitely argues with my characters. She will debate them, and most of the time she usually wins.
Nice. So if someone came up to you and said, Chris, I love your book. I've decided I want to be an author too, and I want to self-publish. What do you tell them?
I'm actually, I think self-publishing is awesome. Like, it's gotten so easy in the past few years. Like, I've been writing for forever, really. And I will say, like, a decade ago, the scene was not like this at all.
Right.
It's super easy. People take self-publishing seriously, I think, at least.
Yeah.
At least the majority of, say, like, fantasy and sci-fi readers.
So 43.
What?
If anyone picked 43, then you are the winner. But
actually, let me real quick. Let me address this. And it's actually something you said at the very beginning of this chat, was that you called me by name. You said Christopher Warman, everyone's favorite. I don't think there are any others. There's actually a bunch of Christopher Warmans, one of which is also an author and also has a page. And for some reason, Goodreads for the longest time attributed our books to this person that isn't me. So that hence the 0 ratings. There should be another Christopher Warman under which Seasons is also put under. But yeah, that was something that I had to contend with on Goodreads for a while. There's also a Christopher Warman who's a filmmaker. So I don't know if
you have no luck.
I know, because I also have an IMDb, because I've been working in film for a long time, and a lot of my credits ended up under this other Christopher Warman. One time this was super strange, was whenever I was in high school, I used to work at a Taco Bell, and I was at the drive-thru, and someone actually gave me a credit card to pay for their meal. I looked at the name on the credit card, and their name was Christopher R., which is my middle name, Warman. The exact same thing. So I looked at the credit card and I was like, wait a minute, is this did this person scam me, like steal my ID or something. So I said, hey, it's new policy. I just kind of lied. I was like, it's new policy. We have to check IDs with credit cards. Could I see your ID? And this guy pulls out his ID, and lo and behold, it was my name, my full name. So there's so many of us. I don't even know these guys. Also his ID was Canadian. So turns out
Oh,
there's a town in Canada called Warman that was founded by someone called Warman. So they have like a big Warman family in Canada that we're not related to at all. Like my side of the Warmans. So yeah, plenty of Christopher Warmans. I've had to contend with copycat accounts for a long time.
oh, Canadian Warmans. Wow, that just sounds terrible. Um,
But what was the original question? I feel like I got sidetracked. It was something
um,
about what would I say to someone who wants to get into self-publishing? Oh yeah, I was talking about how it's actually the landscape is really good. There's a lot of really positive resources for authors. So what I would say to these people is you can do it. Just find a good support group, someone that is like a writing group that is very honest about what you write. Not just someone that is, like your friends that are yes men that will read what you write and say, "Oh, this is great." No, find someone very honest, someone that is detached from you, that will give you honest advice, and then just do it. Like, don't use AI in your writing,
yeah,
or in the covers, really, because we have a wealth of cover artists in the self-pub space that are amazing and affordable, like extremely affordable. These people are waiting to work, and their work is amazing. Both of our covers, one of them is done by a friend, the first one. The second one is done by Omer, who he has worked on anything from like, what's it called? Like Threadlight. Yeah, he's amazing. He's got his hands all over the self pub world.
yeah.
So yeah, my advice is just do it. Like don't worry too much about like the logistics of it. That will come later. Just write something good and put it out there. I'm willing to read it.
You are so much kinder than me. I just like to tell them, writing is the easy part. Just keep that in mind. What you
That,
do after the book is published, that's what's hard.
That's what I mean, like the logistic part of it, the marketing, because that's the thing with self pub, you have to wear so many hats. You have to
Yeah,
be the marketer, you have to be your own PR, you got to be on Twitter, you got to be on YouTube, it's a whole mess of things that nobody's doing it for you, like in traditional publishing. So personally, I find those aspects of it kind of fun. I like to advocate for my own work, and um, I'm not one that just publishes something and then just lets the work speak for itself. Nobody's ever going to read it that way.
right.
But it is tough to juggle a full time job with having to also do the job of marketing your own work.
Yeah,
It's not
the
easy.
full time job with the full time job of writing and the full time job of editing and the full time job. Yes, yeah,
Oh yeah. No, I mean, ironically enough, I wrote Seasons of Abadone after I was laid off during COVID in 2020. And so, the first few months of COVID, at first it wasn't a layoff. It was, we're closing the office for, indefinitely until we figure out, and by 4 months in, they were like, you're actually being laid off. It's over. Department is shut down. But at first, those first few months, I was gaming, I was reading, I was, having fun, just being at home with my wife, who I love, and I love my time with her. I cherish it very much. But then, like a few months in, once that layoff kicked in, I was like, wait a minute. Now I have all this time. I should be doing things that nobody's hiring, because that was another thing. Nobody's hiring during
yeah.
COVID, so I'm just unemployed, in kind of stuck in this limbo. I need to make really good use of my time. So that's when I sat down and I said, I always wanted to write something. Let me put something on paper and see how it goes. So within like 4 or 5 weeks, Seasons of Abadone was written, the first draft, and within like I want to say like 5 months, I already had a job by then, because it was, yeah, November was when I started my job, November 2020. In November is when it released. So I used that whole unemployment period
Nice.
from it started in February to November to write, edit, and publish a book. And the same thing happened with the second book. I was laid off. And then I wrote the second book during my layoff, or during my my unemployment while I looked for work. And then now I recently got laid off again in July, and I'm finishing up the third book. So I'm hoping that at some point I won't have to be laid off in order to write something. I can just write something in my own time while also being employed. But it's kind of happened that way. It's really strange.
Man, what a boom and bust cycle.
Oh my goodness, you have no idea. I work in the gaming industry, and it's seen ups and downs.
Yeah. So have you ever gone to Comic Cons and tried to hawk your books there?
Not at Comic Cons. I have done what's it called? The LA Times book fair,
Hmm.
or it's called the Festival of Books. It's actually the largest book fair in the world.
Yeah.
Um, I think over the weekend that my wife and I were there were around 700,000 people that showed up,
Oh wow.
which it's mind-boggling. Like the amount of people that we interacted with to talk about our books, like it was like one a minute almost. It was so many, and then we sold pretty well. We'll probably do it again once we release our third book because we actually had a really good time. Yeah, there's something that talking online and marketing online, it's fun and all, but there's something like a different type of energy whenever you're actually like there at a booth with your
Yeah.
books and you get to like talk one-on-one with people and talk about your story. And the joke with fantasy authors especially goes that you ask a fantasy author, what is your story about? And they immediately start talking about their magic system. Or they're just like, well, the magic is about, and it's like, no, but what is your book about? So my wife and I, over the weekend before the fair, we had to like sit together and like work on our pitches, get it down
Yeah.
to like the least amount of words possible because you need to hook audiences like whenever you're face to face, and then if you hook them, then you can go into like, okay, let's talk about the world, the characters, the magic, because that's interesting later, but you have to like really like hook them first.
Okay. Can you hold up your books, but hold up the back of at least your first book?
Sure.
I just want to see the back cover copy.
Oh, our first book actually is just Sky. Our
Nice.
second book has it's like a full wraparound.
Oh, so I'm a big believer in the back of your book. You should have 70 words or less to describe your book.
It
So
does. Actually, for both, it does.
yeah,
I think maybe the second one has 100. It's a little longer, but the first one is really short, and it has actually a lot of specifically from Spiffabo. Whenever it was a second
yeah,
place in my finalist, it has some of the quotes and the reviews from that because this is the second edition version, so we had a
yeah.
little bit more time to have it out there and have reviewers take a look.
I now the people in the audience are going to laugh at me because I have so many rules for books I will not read. Um, but if I turn over the back cover and it's like 6 paragraphs and it's in size 4 font, I'm just putting it back down. I'm not reading it. I'm like, no. If
No,
you cannot,
literally, this right here,
it,
this is the whole like this
it,
this is explaining what the book is about right there.
that is beautiful. That is wonderful. I try to get mine. I'm like 50 is the goal, but I've never been able to get down to 50. But so 70 is acceptable.
Right.
And I've sat there 72 going, I can cut 2 words somewhere. Where can I cut them?
I mean, for me personally, I'm like that's what Amazon is for. Like whenever you
Yeah.
go on Amazon, you can have a longer synopsis, but like for the back of the book, you want a blurb, you want something snappy, something hooky, because otherwise, like at that point, just like read the book.
And EL, as he is wont to do, wants to know if you will read a page or two of your book.
Wants me to read a page.
Yeah.
All right, I could do that. Should I read? I could read the first page, or I could read a random page. What do we want to do? Well, I guess it depends if it's too
I would say do
spoilery.
the first page because that gives everyone an introduction to your world. And then
All
we
right,
can all go buy it once this is over if we haven't already got it.
all right, let's do it. And you'll kind of get what I mean with it starts off pretty cozy. And actually, we're in October, so we're in full fall right now. And the first book, as I mentioned before, it's divided in 4 parts. Each part takes place over a season. And so the book starts in fall, so it's kind of a perfect time to read through this. All right, let's do this. Puffs of gray smoke emerging from the brown and orange trees and rising into the sparsely clouded sky marred the otherwise breathtaking view of the forest of Albadone. It was a particularly biting autumn morning, so anyone who wasn't already busy at work was huddled in their small homes by the warmth of a fire. Adriel envied them. She had left her cabin in the face-numbing darkness of early morning to fetch this and that for one of Mother Ola's many enchantments. The old woman was always busy with something. It was hard to keep track of exactly what she was doing. Adriel didn't really mind the early morning treks, as they allowed her the opportunity to meet with the woods folk neighbors that lived near their small home and explore the thick woods. Anything to get out of that decrepit old cabin, she thought to herself. Autumn wasn't her least favorite season. Winter took that prize, but it was far from being her favorite. When she was a child especially, she could feel the trees pulsing with life, strongly in the spring, and a bit more lazily in the summer. But that also meant she could feel them as they became dormant in autumn and slept miserably in the winter, longing for spring. She always felt sorry for them, even now that she knew it was just part of the cycle of nature. Mother Ola had told her that it was a good thing that she could feel the cycle through the trees, and that it was a sign that she would grow to become a powerful enchantress. That's it.
Nice. Okay, so I have one more question I want to ask you. Is there a piece of writing advice that you've been given that you just absolutely ignore and think that just for you it will not work?
Oh my goodness! Oh, so many. Um, let me think about this actually. I think I try a little bit of everything. I don't know. Whenever you're trying to come up with like your own personal style, especially whenever you're just trying to construct a story from scratch, as a young author, you try pretty much everything. You try outlining, you try the vomit draft, both of which have worked really well for me. But I know a lot of authors that really subscribed to certain methods from like, I don't know, famous authors or famous actually that's a really good one. Never start with a murder. You can start however you want, as long as it hooks the audience. You can start however you want. But yeah, no, I can't really think off the top of my head exactly any specific advice. I would say your story should start when like you think it should start, and not like with any like it doesn't even need setup. You could just start your story. A lot of times, especially with our second novel, one thing that we did was we wrote 2 chapters together, my wife and I, to set up the book. And then we continued the story. And then upon reread, we realized that those first 2 chapters were completely unnecessary. They were just a lot of setup, a lot of like things that were just kind of slowly happening. So we just pretty much cut them almost entirely. And we just started the chapter like in the middle of action. I don't know. I don't really believe in rules when it comes to writing, or like really rigid rules. I believe that you should just start the story wherever you want to start it. Do what works for you. If there is one rule that I think you should follow, is have someone that you trust that to give you honest advice read the book, because otherwise you're just gonna like publish something that you think you'd like to read, but it's probably not going to be that good. And also your first draft is probably trash. Let's get that out of the way. It's garbage. Nobody writes a perfect first draft, even if you think it is perfect. As I said, I wrote this 3rd book, the first vomit draft, and I actually went back and like edited some of it, and I was like, you know what, this is pretty good. Fast forward to my wife cutting 10 pages off of a chapter and writing, just no. Your first draft is always going to suck. Just getting it out there, and you got to accept it.
So one of these shows, I'm going to actually read some of Roe's comments, because Roe is my line editor, and he is absolutely brutal. And I mean, for me, you have to be, if you're like, I would consider maybe what I'm just going to ignore you. I mean, I'm very direct. So, if you're like, this sucks, fine, let's fix it. But if you try to be nice and worry about my feelings, which I don't have, then you'll get nowhere.
No, if you think I'm kidding, because I was like actually doing writing earlier, page 1 of a chapter, full X. Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5 mostly, and then like she will write like, these are not even like rewrites. These are notes for me of like, why would you do this? Why do you think the character would do this? Almost like she's writing like an English lit novel, or not novel, like a paper of our own book, and that actually helps a lot. Like, I mean, that's her strength, is deconstruction, just taking something that I've built, breaking it down to its core parts, and then we can like rebuild from there. And I think that's really why our collaboration works really well. But no, this chapter was a mess, and it's probably because this was like look at that. Look, that's all crossed out. Every single line is crossed on this page. Why did she even keep this page at all? There are 1, 2, 3 sentences. This whole page, 3 sentences she kept. Are you kidding me? So yeah, she humbles me a lot, but I think authors need to be humbled by their editors and collaborators. That's just how it is.
So the book I was writing, I wrote a chapter, and this is just an abomination. 1, it's all dialogue. 2, nothing happens. It's just 2 people standing there talking to each other. And 3, the character I chose for the POV isn't even speaking. He's just watching. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is an abomination.
Why would you do this?
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop for now. I'm going to work on something else. Because I don't know what to do with that. Because I very much believe in write your whole story and then go back and fix it. But I'm like, I think I need to print this out and burn it.
Just to make a statement to yourself.
So yes, I was like, okay, so clearly the creative juices are not flowing now. Let's try something else. So I now have 3 current works not in progress, I would call them. Because all of them I'm kind of got stuck.
Waiting to see how they go.
So I'm like, just sit on it for, a couple weeks, which becomes a couple months, because I play games instead.
What do you play? What's your go-to game?
Oh, you don't even want to know. It's older than you.
Hey, I'm a big gamer. I play pretty much anything.
I like to play Masters of Orion 2, which came out in '93, I believe.
That is not older than me, but yeah. But that's something my dad would play.
Yeah, Civilization is always solid. I always play those.
Yeah. Huge
but yeah, I played one like live game or whatever. And it's the first time I ever played it, and I forget what it was, but Age of Empires, something like that. So I'm sitting there playing, trying to figure it out. And my brother at the time was living with me for a very short amount of time. Otherwise, he'd be dead. But he just came over my shoulder. He's like, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, see, they just killed this. Now they killed this. You can't even produce any more serfs. You're dead. You just don't." And just running commentary of I go down in flames. And I'm like, I'm never playing this again. Never, and I've never played like an action. It's so all my games I play are turn-based.
No, yeah, Age of Empire. Yeah, it takes that Civ turn-based model and makes it live. I'm a big Age of Empire 2 fan. That was actually my first foray into strategy games. But I do prefer Civilization. I'm a huge Civ fan. That's actually what I was playing right before coming on Civ 6.
Oh, I don't like 6 so much. I mean, I like to have like 20, 30 cities, and there is no way on earth you can get that many cities in Civ 6.
Yeah,
it's just too slow.
Absolutely true. It's pretty brutal. I do like it when you mod it. It's got some good mods. The mod community is really good. And if you mod it enough, you can get it to where you like it. But yeah, no, Age of Empire 2, and what was the other one? What was it? Red Alert. What was that series? It was like Command and Conquer. That was a good one. That was my jam.
The people in the chat are going to have to help you with that one. I have no idea. So I like in Civ 6, I like how you can have an archaeologist and go into other people's countries and steal their artifacts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know why that gives me such a kick, but I do. I'm like, when can I make the archaeologist and go steal their? I don't know why. I'm demented.
It's
but
a fun way to win.
Oh, so Christopher, is there anything that I should have asked you and I did not today?
How I'm doing, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. No, this it's honestly been wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to talk shop, talk about writing, talk about our books. Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Well, I'm looking forward to book 3, and I will have to check. I'm really, really good at buying people's books.
Same.
I'm not so good at reading them. But
Yeah, same.
let's see.
I made it a point early this year where I was going to read every self-published book that I own, and I got pretty far. I read like 5 or 6 of them, some really good ones. But then I just kind of stopped because um, my TBR is infinite. Just too many
Yeah.
books that I need to get to.
I told myself now for my newsletter every month I actually recommend a book to the newsletter people. So I'm like, so I have to read a book, and it has to be a good book because I have to recommend it. And when it gets towards the end of the month, I'm like, oh, did I read it? What can I do? I have something finished? So I tend to, like about the 20th, I'm like, I got to finish this book.
Panic read.
Yeah. So so Tim McKay, your book will not be read if I start on the 20th because it's too long, and I can't do a review for the first third of the book. Well, I guess I could and just feature Tim's 3 months in a row, but
Once again, mine's first book, 220 pages.
see, music to my ears.
Also, I will say one last thing. We do have a website. It's marche-warman.com. And on our website, we actually do have, it's called World Lore. And it's almost like a little mini Wikipedia where we have like illustrations of our cities from some of our friends, illustrations of characters, and then like a little biography, like where they were born, when they were born, and how things tie together. Because the world is large. As I said, we start really small, but as the books progress, it's going to get bigger and bigger. So we like to keep track for you. So check it out.
Disagree, Bo. Strongly disagree. I do have one story about me just because I stress people for no reason apparently. But my first book, I used a developmental editor, and so she read through everything and left notes and everything. And then I was like, oh, by the way, I have this. I was calling it my Bible, basically my wiki. I'm like, should I have given you this? And I told her after she was done.
The look she probably gave you was
oh my god. Yeah, it was all online, so she could cuss and I would never hear it. But
you felt it probably. Yeah.
I was like, ooh, there's a tremble in the force. Yes, see, smaller is better. I'm
good for a hook, especially. And actually, you know what? That's something that I would say to a self-published author. I know I'm going backwards here, but
yeah.
Don't worry about publishing like a 500 to 1,000 word like epic. Don't worry about that. Write something that write something small, practice, use that as a launch pad because more people will read it. It's actually completely true. And also it will be easier for you to write. So starting small is good. Move on from there.
Yep. So I'm currently reading The Garden Maze because that is a short book. I should be finished, but I've been slacking because my newsletter went out, so now I'm not on the hook till another few weeks. But yes, Chris, thank you for this. It's been entertaining. When you come out with book 3, if you want to do a book launch, let us know.
Absolutely, I appreciate the offer.
Cool. And now it is time to wave awkwardly to everyone.